Hello and welcome to Sigmoid webinar on amplifying business value of analytics with cloud data warehouse. We have a distinguished set of speakers today. The moderator for the panel discussion is Kathleen Maley. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you will find a Q&A button. Feel free to post your questions using it, and we'll be happy to address as many questions as possible. There will be 2 polls during the webinar. Please provide your response and make your opinion count. This webinar is being recorded. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Kathleen, the moderator for today's panel discussion.
John, thank you so much for the introduction, and it's wonderful to be back here with Sigmoid. I've been working with Sigmoid for a couple of years, and I always enjoy participating in events like this. We have an amazing panel today, so I'm not going to waste any time. Let's go ahead and jump right into introductions. And if each of our panelists, after I give your name and title, if you would just give a minute or two to introduce yourselves in more detail. So first we have Nelson Chieh. Nelson is the head of data, advanced analytics and Martech at Natura and Company. Nelson?
Hi, nice to meet you, and very thanks for Sigma team to invite me. Hope I can share with my experience. It's kind of more than 10 years dealing with data from Banco Itaú through now Natura & Co. Natura & Co is a multi-brand beauty company. We operate in more than 120 countries with the joint of Avon. So nice to receive your question, and hope can contribute to your doubt, or maybe we can solve together your challenges.
Wonderful, thank you, Nelson. Next we have Iván Herrero Bartolomé, who is the Chief Data Officer at Intercorp.
Hi, Kathleen. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm the Chief Data Officer of Intercorp. Intercorp is one of the biggest conglomerates in Peru. We operate in sectors such as retail, finance, insurance, healthcare, entertainment, and education. And I lead the data analytics strategy for the group. I'm so glad to be here, and hopefully we can give some thoughts around how to move to the cloud and what to expect.
Excellent, thank you. Next we have Juan Carlos Ore, who's Chief Data Officer at Credicorp Capital.
Thank you, Kathleen. Welcome, everybody. Yes, I'm the CDO at Credicorp Capital, which is the investment bank of the Credicorp Group here in Peru. We also operate in Chile, Colombia, Panama, and US. I've been in the data and analytics market for a while. Happy to be here. Thank you, Sigmoid, for the invitation. Hopefully, we're having a good time today.
I think we absolutely will. Thank you, Juan Carlos. And last but not least, Anush Kumar, the Chief Growth Officer for Sigmoid LATAM. Anush?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, hi. My name is Anush. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Sigmoid. So Sigmoid solves complex machine learning projects across the globe. So I'm going to share my experience working specifically with LATAM clients and solving complex machine learning projects around data science and data engineering. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I suppose I should say a little bit about myself and my background. I've been in finance for the last 15 years as a data scientist myself. So I'm less on the data engineering side and data management side, more on the data usage side. And what I have found is that CDOs are my most important partner in an organization, because it's when we work together that really magical, powerful things can happen for an organization. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you today. We're actually going to start with our first poll. So if our host could pop that up for us. Here we go. And where is your enterprise data currently hosted? I think this will help our panelists customize their answers a little bit, focus their answers a little bit to help make sure the audience gets what we hope you will from this exchange. And it looks like a fairly even split. I'm watching, we've got about 40 respondents so far, about coming up on 2/3 of our audience responding, and a very even split between on cloud and on-prem. So this is great. Keep that in mind, gentlemen, if you would. We've got folks on both sides, those who are starting to operate on cloud and those who are probably earlier on in the journey. Wonderful. All right, so I'm just going to click share results. I think everybody should be able to see that very quickly, but you can see that 50-50 split. Very interesting. And so now let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's start with our first question. Nelson, I'd like to start with you, if we can. Talk about on-prem versus cloud. What were the key reasons for you and for your organization to make the decision to migrate to a cloud data warehouse?
Okay, I'm responsible for the Natura encode data teams from data strategy, data engineering, architecture, and data science. And we are on our journey moving our on-premise data to cloud solution as fast as we can. Mainly because of we are deploying more sophisticated AI models, and we are in our middle way of the integration with Avon International. So we choose a cloud solution because this solution gives us more flexibility, scalability, and more easy integration tools, and we can access the up-to-date solution, since data governance, data quality, until sophisticated data AI and machine learning algorithm. So the deploy is easier, and to manage the infrastructure is easier for us also. So we can have a better time to marketing for our solution using cloud solutions.
Excellent, excellent. Iván, I know you had thoughts on this as well. Can you share some of your reasons and the reasons your company chose to move in this direction?
Sure. Yeah, one of them is flexibility, as Nelson mentioned. The other ones probably would be being able to access more computing power than we would have in an on-prem architecture. And there's, I would say, two other reasons to move to the cloud. The first one is shortening the time to value. So everything is faster when you work in the cloud. You don't have to go buy some on-prem hardware or something like that. You just at the speed of a click have something just deployed, and you can use it right away. And probably, yeah, focusing on driving value for the business. You know, when you have an on-prem architecture, there's a lot of effort you have to make just to have the hardware running smoothly as expected. But in the cloud, you can focus, especially we work in on top of GCP, so we're very focused on using serverless components of GCP. So we don't have to waste any minutes of our time on thinking of how we should architect our different instances, or how to optimize their functionality or their performance. We just have to think of what's the problem we want to solve, and focusing on solving it as fast and efficiently as possible, and not thinking of servers or instances or things like that. I think that's a huge difference that that we can find in the cloud, and that's impossible to find in on-prem architecture.
Mm-hmm. So sort of staying in that vein, I want to jump to the next question with you, Iván. With respect to your ability to deliver data and analytics, what problems did migration to the cloud solve, and what problems did it not solve?
Well, I would say it solved what it was expected to solve. Now we're processing tens of billions of thousands seamlessly and efficiently, and that's something that we just couldn't do in our previous architecture on premise. So yes, we have the flexibility, we have the computing power that we need, and we can untap it with just when we need it, and without wasting money in having capability that we're not using. And yeah, it surely we're doing things faster than ever, and that's bringing value for the business. So it solved the technical side of the equation, but we have to realize, and the sooner the better, that this is a two-side equation. So we have the technical side and we have the business side. So you can expect to solve the business side of the equation just by moving to the cloud, because that's on the tech side of the equation. And I mean that moving to the cloud is not gonna solve your problems which are related to siloed data or siloed functions in your company, or if you want to move to a more insights-driven culture. That just moving to the cloud is not something magical. It's gonna solve some problems, but there's a lot of efforts you have to do on parallel to that to solve the other part of the equation.
I think that's such an important point. Anush, what would you add to that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kathleen. So based on the experience working with some of my customer, earlier the biggest challenge that we had is working on the on-premises data. So when we did machine learning modules, we always had challenges with processing and computing powers and stuff. But right now, in the last 2 years, I see my clients specifically on Snowflake, Amazon Redshift, BigQuery. It really solved the problem. So we are able to handle large volume of data. So that's something was solved using cloud data warehouse. But the problem that it didn't solve was mainly with the enterprise clients with silos of data. Even after moving into the cloud, still there was a lot of mismatch in terms of the data. So we still had a data problem. That's something still not yet solved.
Absolutely. Juan Carlos, I see you nodding. I want to pull you into this as well. What would you say?
Yeah, I completely agree with Iván and Anush. I mean, if you on-prem have some problem with the data, moving to the cloud is not going to solve that. If you on-prem have quality issues, don't know who's the owner of the data, have silos like Anush and Iván mentioned, moving to the cloud is not going to solve that. And at the end of the day, the business is not asking you to implement a data lake. The business is asking you for results. I mean, and you're not going to get those results if you move the way that you are working on-prem to the cloud. I mean, you should focus on the blood of the business, that is the data. So implementing cloud analytics platform is not only moving silo and ungoverned information to it. The very first step is to govern the data. But what exactly that means? Have you identified the golden sources? Have you already sit with the business and defined the business terms related to their use case, the owners, data quality rules? So I think that's the very first step you should ask. Either, I mean, if you work on-prem, like I think it were like 45% of the audience, or you are on the cloud. You should focus on the data and what results the business is asking you about it.
You know, at the risk of staying too long on this question, I do want to offer my own perspective. So as a data user, you know, one of the big challenges I had in one of my previous companies was the fact that I wanted to do optimization, and I did not have internal compute power at a sufficient level at my disposal. And so for us, moving to the cloud was a huge advantage, because all of a sudden I could really scale up and scale down as I needed. But you're 100% right. It doesn't solve the data challenges. And whether you have already moved to the cloud or you haven't moved to the cloud, there's never a wrong time to get your data under control and governed. The other piece of it, because you made this point, Juan Carlos, it's about results. So the other thing that moving to the cloud doesn't solve is integrating the ultimate analytical solution, whether it's a model or a report, integrating that solution into business process and business decision making. And so it's the organizing the data on the front end, having the compute power to get the work done, but it still doesn't solve the business people change management that Iván initially mentioned. So it's three big pieces. Cloud, huge advantage to cloud, but I love the way Iván said it. It solves the problems it was designed to solve. Doesn't solve everything. So I know it's time for a second poll. I want to get that poll in here before we return to the question. So can we get that poll popped up, please? All right, what is the most important factor for you while choosing a cloud data warehouse? So again, it'll be interesting to see the results here. Our panelists can focus their responses around where our audience currently are with this. So I'll give that, we've got about 30% voted so far. I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. Really is looking like we've got performance and scalability as the leader. Integration capability is a second. So we're at about 2/3 having voted. We'll give it a few more seconds maybe before we pop that up and show the results. All right, are we ready to share that? Excellent. There we go. Performance and scalability. And it's really interesting because that's a big part of what we've been talking about is the performance and scalability. I'd love to, know more about that integration capability, because that's where we're going to start getting the business results. So availability of trained engineers, that's a really interesting one. And I know we're going to touch on that one a little bit later. So let me stop sharing that and bring that down. I think I did that right. All right, and let's head back to the questions. We are starting to get some questions through the Q&A, which is great. I'll keep an eye on that. But for now, let's go ahead to our next question. Iván, again, I'm going to start with you for this one. What were the primary challenges you faced in establishing cloud-enabled data and analytics, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think that one of the main problems that companies normally face when moving to the cloud is cost. If it's so easy to create new instances in the cloud that if you don't govern the environment very well, it's so easy to start seeing your cost exponentially growing. So, and that's something that you don't necessarily do when you're working on-prem. So that's a capability you have to develop in your teams. And it's not always easy because for a data scientist, this is just, okay, I created an instance, that's what I need, and probably they will deploy the biggest instance available, so they are sure it's gonna be enough for their needs. But then they don't realize how expensive it is to have that instance switch on when they're not using it. So making data scientists understand that this is not something for free, it's costing out, and it's okay to use the resources that we have, but we have to use them in a very efficient manner, and that implies that they have to consider when they're using those resources and when they're not using them, and apply some best practices in the way they develop their models, so we can separate the source code and the storage of the information they're using from the computing power. That's where the more expensive part really is. So how to decouple all those three components so you can switch off and on the computer power that you need when you need it, and just keep on working smoothly. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we faced, and I think it's a very common challenge worldwide.
Excellent, excellent. Nelson, what would you add to that? What were the primary challenges you faced when establishing that cloud-enabled data and analytics, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think the common misunderstanding is moving to cloud bring automatically the culture of data-driven, or magically we can deploy fastly a machine learning algorithm. As Juan and Iván mentioned, without data governance, moving to cloud just get the whole thing worse. So the first challenge is how we'd like to govern our new data platform based in cloud. The second point is I think that we normally move from one side to another side very fast. Our first decision is cloud only. After our decision to move to cloud, all things have to new things should be built in our cloud solution. But the point is, until you move the whole data to your cloud platform, you still depend on several workaround or temporary solution in our premise solutions. So our second decision is let's adopt the cloud first mentality, mindset, but not cloud only. So the cultural change is very important, because when you spread the idea of cloud adoption, the common sense is on-prem is bad, on-prem is old-fashioned, but I think the most part of the revenue, until you conclude that cloud moving, comes from the on-prem solution. How to dealing with both platform until you conclude the cloud migration.
That's a great point.
Big problem.
Yeah. Very practical. I mean, that's how it works. Juan Carlos, what would you add? I see you again nodding along.
Yeah, I think that's the way to get your attention. Yeah, I mean, in the same page that Nelson was mentioning, that you have to change the mindset of the people that were working on-prem and then moving to the cloud. I will specify that into the security team, because when you mention cloud to a security team, they are scared. I mean, they're scared. They say, okay, our data is going to be available for everybody. We should implement all these measures that I have here, and we didn't have on-prem. So I mean, you want they want your data to be more secure than it was on-prem. So I think it is important to have a great partnership with the security department. Otherwise, you are going to have I mean, not an like an obstacle to your cloud implementation, because I mean you're going to have so much steps to accomplish that I mean that the cloud implementation, instead of costing 100, is going to cost you like, I mean, 10 times at that. So I think that security issues, I mean, I'm completely agree that you have to pay attention to security, but I mean following the same policies that that you have across your whole organization.
Yeah. Let's pull it around a little bit to that cost and return part of the conversation. So Juan Carlos, staying with you if we can, what about your ability to monetize on your data and analytics and or deliver the ROI that you were expecting when you migrated to the cloud? Did you get that return that you were expecting?
Okay, I think there are many ways to move data to the cloud. You can start by moving data by domains, by department, by source, by country, or by my preferred one is by use case. In our case, we selected, I mean, pain points from the business and see which one is going to give us more result. And according to the value that it will generate to the company, we selected those business cases because we can, I mean, at first move all the information from on-prem to the cloud. That is going to take years for that. So you should start like building like a Lego piece by piece. I mean, which one do I select? I select the one that is going to give me the best result to the business. So in that line, yes, I think that is the way you should. I mean, in our case, that's the strategy that we select, and the results, I think, are the ones that we were expecting.
Excellent, excellent. Iván, what would you say here?
I don't know if it's possible to set up like an expected ROI just for the fact of moving to the cloud, because as I was saying before, that's just a means. So yeah, you take all your data, you move it to the cloud. I don't know if there's something you can expect, some actual business value you can expect just for doing that. If everything remains as it was, you're not affecting the business. So how is that? How can you expect any kind of ROI or any kind of different business outcome just from moving your data from an on-prem architecture to the cloud? So I think that's my first point. It's, you cannot expect something to happen if you keep on working the same way just because you change the place that you're storing your data in. So I will probably rephrase the question to is our analytics strategy or our analytics efforts bringing tangible benefits for our business? And it's absolutely yes. Are they showing an ROI? Absolutely yes. But we had to spend some time, and it was not a short time, first moving data to the cloud in order that we could use that computing power to fuel the business cases that we're facing and that we're solving now, which are the ones that are proving value for the business. And probably we wouldn't be delivering that value to the business without moving our data to the cloud. But I want to emphasize that point, that just moving data to the cloud is not going to bring value. So it's better that you don't expect any ROI just for by doing that. So it's I want to be very clear on that, because I think it's a very often companies misunderstand those points.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it goes back to the earlier point. There's the processing power that you get when you move to the cloud, but that doesn't solve your data silo problem. That's a whole other exercise. And it doesn't solve the integration and adoption of solutions by the business. So all of these things, if these three things need to be solved together, maybe we need to think about ROI as stemming from these three things when we do them in an integrated way. I think that's a great point.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go off script a little bit here, gentlemen, because we have a great question that I think this panel is uniquely positioned to answer. And I don't know if the right place to start is Anush, but I'm gonna suggest that. The question is, do you believe that performance and scalability and integration capabilities are that different between the current cloud offerings? So I know that we've got, this panel here represents, the market of opportunity right now, or the market, the big players. So Anush, maybe I'll start with you, and then anybody else who has a sense of that based on the evaluations you did before you made your selection.
Yeah, so basically when you relate to performance and scalability with integration, so based on my experience working with some of the clients, we generally do the benchmark. So when we do the benchmark, we just try to understand from on-premises to cloud in terms of the volume of data and what kind of complexity that you have in terms of the integrations with the existing third-party systems. So when we do that alignment, we recommend what are the kind of data that you would like to consume could be moved onto cloud, and what are the data that you still need to keep it on premises. So we have done some good evaluations with client. So based on that, then we do the recommendation if the client needs to consume those data for different business use cases.
So I think what I hear you saying is that the selection of your cloud provider really stems from, well, what are the sorts of things you're trying to do, that some of these cloud providers are better at certain activities than other activities. So again, it's got to be a business first approach. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at my experience working with some of the BFSI, the clients also have on-premises Cloudera, and client also has cloud Snowflake. So when we do some kind of a benchmarking, we just try to understand like what are based on the business use cases, what are the kind of data that needs to be moved on the cloud, and what are the data that can be on premises for different types of business use cases, where a Sigmoid engineer data science team builds some modeling. So we do that analysis and we give the right recommendations to the customers. So, and it depends totally based on the integration that they need from different ERP systems.
Yeah, makes sense. Anybody else on the panel want to jump in? Have any? Juan
Yeah,
Carlos?
yes. I want to add in the same page as Anush. It also depends of the type of company or the type of business that you are in. For example, in our case, we are an investment bank. I mean, we operate in different countries and we have a lot of data. But if I compare myself with a retail bank, I mean, a retail bank have much more data than I have. I mean, so, and they are going to do different analysis than I'm going to make. So the objective is different. So what I am looking at, the analysis that I am looking is different from each business. A telecom company is having much more data, different kind of analysis, different tools. So in the same page, as Anush mentioned, it also depends of what is your final objective. What are you expecting to achieve with this? I mean, for me, it's a tool. The cloud is a tool. I mean, what are you going to do with this tool? And then you select your model.
Iván, I think I saw you signal.
Yeah, I would add that I think that every like the three big cloud providers now, all of them obviously can scale. Probably the question is how hard it is for users to keep their cloud infrastructure scaling efficiently without the need of highly specialized skills that are hard to find, especially in Latin America. So I think that's a key point to assess when you're evaluating different cloud providers, especially when you talk about data, because when you're talking about any other technological uses of the cloud, I think they're more similar. But when you think of data, it's important that you move to an architecture that like you don't have to be thinking of the number of instances and how do I have to architecture this component so it responds smoothly to my use cases. Because if not, you're gonna have you have a limited like time and effort and budget, and you're gonna have to at some time at the beginning, yeah, everything is easy to do, but when you're trying to scale your capabilities and the computing power, it can degrade. It can great when you reach some kind of sophistication, some level of sophistication. So in our case, being able to access as many serverless components as possible was something important for our decision. I don't want to be caring about how components work or the number of instances. I should deploy for the component to work as expected. I want to focus my effort on just using the component, and it should just transparently scale when needed.
So it's interesting. I think what I'm hearing is it depends on what you're trying to solve, of course, and what your unique sort of needs are for the company. But I'm also hearing this is why it's a good idea to engage someone who specializes in helping companies migrate to the cloud. Not because they necessarily know the right answer on day one, but because they know the right questions to ask. You know, I mean, of course, skills. Yeah, do I even have the skills locally to support it? What an obvious thing to consider. Didn't occur to me until you just said it, Iván, right? So much of this, doing it successfully, is knowing what questions do I need to answer through the process. Yeah, wonderful advice. Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead. There's a question that is popping up over and over and over in the chat and the Q&A, and you're not gonna be surprised by this one. What learnings or guidance do you have regarding solving the problem of siloed data after moving to the cloud? What should be done? What should not be done? And any insights you have on why this is so difficult. So that is open for anyone. Does anyone have a very strong, maybe again, we'll start with Anush because you've seen this time and time again.
Yeah, that's a good question. So based on my experience, I do see most of the problems that the clients come across. For an example, Salesforce is being leveraged by the sales team. The same data could be valuable for the marketing team. And when we did some kind of a migration to the cloud data warehouse, still there was a lot of mismatch, and they wanted to centralize this data to have a comprehensive view for visualization for different business use cases. The challenges that we did have is from a schema matching, there was a lot of duplications and stuff. We followed some of the best practices from Sigmoid's data engineering team. that's something that we could just share after this webinar too. One is certain practices to make sure that the duplication is quickly removed, and we used quite a few technology tools which has really helped in terms of streamlining these data, and this has helped companies to leverage these silo data which came into cloud for different departments. But still, I would say that 50% of the problem was not solved, and still we are trying to use our best practices, and I hope it gets streamlined in future with most of these silo applications.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can add to that I will ask myself why the users are still creating the silos if you already implemented some solution in the cloud. So I think maybe either way, I didn't communicate well the solutions or the benefits of the cloud to the users, or the solution that I implemented is not already solving all the problems that they have. So I think that's very important, because something we focus more on, okay, we have to move to the cloud. I mean, we are going to implement AI, ML, and all this fancy stuff in the cloud, and we forget about the users and their necessities. So we should first, I think Nelson mentioned that it's very important, the change management process. I mean, we should go hand by hand with the users in this process. It's not a data process, it's not an analytics, it's not an IT process. It's a project from the company, and you should move together. And you should embrace the users to use your solution. Otherwise, you are creating a big white elephant that nobody's going to use. And then turn, I mean, with the users to see what are their necessities, because today they have 5 necessities. In 6 months, as we have seen these 2 years with the pandemic, I mean, they change. I mean, the only sure thing that is going to happen is change. So you have to be very close to the users to see what they are needing, and if you are able or not to fill their necessities.
Wonderful. Yes, Nelson, go ahead.
I think that the issue behind the silo data is shadow IT. The main point is how IT team can deliver solution for business people. The second point is the knowledge management. Several silo data, they don't have the rules or the business rules to rebuild the solution. So I think I recognize that this silo data in the beginning of the data migration, data governance journey has its value. But this data should be shared in a secure way, in a governed way, to the data user community. So our strategy is, first, we catalog this silo data, and we bring this data to our productive environment at once, and we put a data owner on it, and we put our IT guy to do reversal mapping and documentation, and we rebuild the whole solution using the correct technology and the correct data source. I think it's not only the point of the willingness of the data owner want to make the data isolate or secure. I think it's the data governance issue it should be facing. That it's a fact. We have to rebuild the solution, but until that, we have to embrace that it's part of our life. It's not good, but it's part of our life in the beginning. and worked hard to solve this problem.
You know, Nelson, you just made me think of an analogy, because in a sense, it seems like you're taking a user-first approach. If this is the stuff they need, how do I now incorporate it into a more well-designed, well-controlled solution? And it makes me think about the way on a lot of college campuses in the US, when they're first being designed, the pathways between buildings are not mapped and paved. They wait for the students to define the paths across the grass and go, okay, well, that's where people are gonna walk. That's where we're gonna put our pathway. And it sounds very much the same thing. This is obviously the data that people want and need to solve their problems. Thank you for, you know, telling us that, business user. Now we're going to go ahead and build you a high performing solution. I think it's brilliant. I think that's great. What a great approach to take. Wonderful. I want to jump back to one of the questions we have here before I go to at least two more. We're getting lots of questions through chat, through the Q&A. It's great. And there are another 3 questions in there that are going to be great. But before we get to that, you all have been on cloud for some period of time. And so you are uniquely positioned to answer this next question. Do you think that enterprises could have been better prepared to manage uncertainties like COVID-19 faster if they had already moved to the cloud? And do you think that moving to the cloud now will help them set themselves up for quicker response to crises, unknown crises, that we will almost certainly experience in the future? Iván, I'm going to throw that to you first.
I would want to say yes, of course, but I think it depends on the amount of data that each company has. Maybe some companies that don't produce so much data, so they can just analyze whatever they need at the pace they need it in an on-prem architecture. Yeah, I think it could be. In our case, it was critical to have been working on moving the data of the supermarkets to the cloud for some years before the COVID hit us. And my team and I started working with the supermarkets team, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months before the pandemic hit. So, and it was like, we were lucky, you know, because we could have started that project with any other company in the group, but we started with the supermarkets. And it proved to be very useful, because when the pandemic hit, the architecture we've built that enabled us to understand how the consumer behavior was changing first time every day. So the committee that was formed and with the CEO of the company, with the CTO and other directors from marketing and the commercial area, they could just sit together, look at the screen, look at the different dashboard that we've been building together with their teams, and just very quickly understand what the kind of decisions they had to make to keep on serving our customers as good as we could. So yeah, and that's the kind of granularity of those analyses that they were performing, and the speed at which they could interact with the data. That was something that just couldn't be done. Just couldn't have been done with the previous architecture that they had. So in our case, absolutely.
Anush, what would you add from a broader perspective, working with so many different companies?
Yeah, Sigmoid working with some of the largest CPG and e-commerce companies across the globe. During the pandemic, what I've seen earlier, processing real-time data was very, very minimal. But during pandemic, our engineering team are processing terabytes of data where clients are using, especially in the e-commerce industry, using the real-time data to take quick business decisions. So that's something that I've seen during pandemic, and we are right now processing like huge terabyte volume of data in the e-commerce industries.
Nelson, I know that you had some really powerful insights when we were prepping for this. Would you share those relative to this?
Sure. And our business model is direct selling. Just for example, our consultant, beauty consultant, they normally deliver our magazine to the final user's home. And in the same time, she can build a relationship, make product suggestion, but with the isolation, with the pandemic, from one day to another, she can go to the customer's home. So go digital for us is not an option. If we want to survive, we have to go digital. And the second point, it's not enough go digital. We should be digital. We should reorient our decision using data. I saw many jokes concerning the data-driven. Who accelerated the data-driven? Your CGO, CIO, your customer. Oh, COVID-19. Definitely, COVID-19 accelerates the data-driven culture, because the scenery change from one day to another. My team have to retrain 50 credit and collection models, because the scenery change completely from one week to another. And without the cloud capability, it should take months for us. We do it, I think, in 3 weeks. Retrain our model, make them to perform in the same level before the COVID. So we survived the COVID isolation and business challenge, basically because we have the minimal capability in using cloud to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think about all of the companies who just hadn't gotten around to moving to cloud yet, and they were not able to retrain their models in 3 weeks, and who knows where they are now. I mean, it can be easy to take it for granted, but if you're on the other side of it, I mean, that's tough. That's painful. I guess it's always the good time. It's always good to do it, because you just don't know what's coming down the road. I'm going to take it. Unfortunately, we don't have time. So I think we'll have to capture some of these remaining questions. We have several questions in here that are incredibly valuable, but we are coming up on time. And so I want to wrap with one question that I'd love for everyone to answer. And I think, learning from other people's experience is so valuable. And I know anytime I've done something for the first time, I've learned so much that I implement the second time, so that whatever I'm doing is better, easier, faster, all of that. So I would like to ask all of you, and we'll start with Anush, actually, if we can. What would you do differently with respect to leveraging cloud for data and analytics if you had the chance to do it over?
Kathleen, if you look at generally client invite me only if something goes wrong, but yeah. So yeah, just to share my experience, what I would do different. This is a recommendation generally I gave to the client. So basically, we look into the whole ecosystem, whole business problems, from business logics, mapping, and we just try to see, is a client required to move the whole ecosystem into cloud, or what are the business key priority use cases where we could centralize and move to cloud. So we do that kind of a benchmark. And I always get into the other side when the client has made some error. That's when he invites. So then when I do this evaluation, I give the right recommendation. That could be also from the evaluation of the data where it's warehouse itself. So sometimes client might be in AWS and he might use Redshift, but there is still a possibility of going with Snowflake. It depends on use case to use case. So there we give some kind of benchmark, we understand the business problem, and we see that can this in a longer run can be taken care, or do you really need to move to a different cloud? So that's where we get into, and we give the right evaluation, and then we do that recommendation to the customers.
Excellent.
So I think this question might be more for the Nelson, Juan, and Iván.
Sure. So 1 minute each before we run out of time. Let's start with Iván.
I would say that just to be as concrete as I can, my suggestion is don't put your KPI, don't focus your KPIs on volume. So, and this is very typical. So how much data have we uploaded to the cloud? That's not the way to go. Put your KPIs on the business. How much data are we using? How many users are engaging with the solutions we've developed? That's the way to go. And this is where you drive value. This is where you drive frustration.
Wonderful. Juan Carlos.
What do I do differently? I will call Anush this time. and also I will spend more time in the change management process. I think that's very important, because what you're implementing, I mean, it's not only the cloud. Don't forget about the technology, the solution. You are implementing a new way of work. I mean, and that requires change management. And if you don't have that component, I mean, it's going to be very hard, the adoption process. So I should do that. And also going on Anush.
Nelson, you get the last word today.
In my personal life, I have two sets of twins. I have 2 girls of 9 and 2 boys of 5 years. And I definitely adopted Amazon Jeff Bezos' no regret decision making. I think the point is, as Juan Carlos said, we should orient our cloud strategy based on a case. We should choose a good case for business. In Natura, we choose data science because there is a pain point that we can scale in our on-premise data science platform. And why not move the whole 120 statistical model to the cloud solution, so we can make data science happier and the credit and collection people, financial people happier. So I think I think secret ingredient is make your end user happier, choose the right case, and move data, have the data governance job done during the migration, because I think it's the main vulnerability of the data migration is the lack of data governance. You move data without the governance.
Well, gentlemen, we are 1 minute over time. This has been an incredible panel. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. To our participants, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for staying on. The length of the webinar that speaks to the value of the information that was shared. We will be sending a survey and would love to hear your feedback. I know we'll be doing more of these in the future, but what a fantastic event today, and thank you all.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.